Oh no, the branding. I forgot the second thing. Hold on, everybody. Okay, we did it. Hello, everyone. Zach Gatorman looks a little different on your right screen, I think. Ryan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me to fill in for Zach last minute. Happy Friday to you. Hope everybody's having a great weekend, but doing okay.
Yes. Happy Friday to you as well, to everyone out there. You were telling me about your personal live Royal Rumble experience as you made the longer trip than people would realize that aren't from Texas. I'm not either, but I mean, you're from the DFW area, or are you from Austin? You live in Austin. Right?
Austin, yeah.
Austin, yeah. So even farther, right? Or same distance, I guess. Austin to San Antonio is like going from, Maine to like Pittsburgh, probably, right? From a geographical standpoint. So,
is that about an hour and 30 minutes? If so, I will say yes.
Like driving or flying?
Driving.
Oh no, that's much farther than that. So I thought it was more than that. So I guess I'm overestimating the size of Texas there on that landscape. So yeah, hour and a half. That'd be like going from where I'm from to go to like Cincinnati. So that's not too bad.
There you go.
So there you go. Some regional geography there. So we'll hear all about that very soon. I'm very excited to listen to hear that. And then Zach is here. Hello, Zach. Ooh, look at that. I told you I did some imaging stuff, so this is very exciting. So we're on the fly here doing some stuff. But nice. So Zach is not here; he's not able to make it today. But Brian, you were so kind to join us. You are a staple now, I can say safely here on the Torch YouTube page. So thank you as always for being here. A lot on the show today. We've got talk about Cody. We've got talk about the road to WrestleMania. Road to Revolution, and then I made a little Road to Perdition joke for all the people that are my age that have probably seen that movie. So we've got a lot going on here today. But first, I want to start with you, Brian. And you were there live in the Alamo Dome,
yes.
Which again, you're from there. I guess I have some Tyler tangent questions for you before we start. So the Alamo Dome, there is no professional football team in San Antonio.
Correct.
There is the UTSA, right? Is the biggest college team there. The Roadrunners of UTSA. Do they play there?
And yes, and then you will have
like a rodeo. I don't want to be
like. Well, so you will have the occasional college football game. Texas, when they're not like super powered, they will always have the Alamo Dome game there. So that'll be kind of like their home game. Warriors and Spurs recently had a game there for like the biggest I think it was like the biggest NBA crowd in history like a couple of weeks ago.
Very cool. I don't know if you or I are having the connection issue. It's usually me. So if I'm cutting in and out, I apologize to everybody. But if not, let me know in the comments, Brian. Are you still there, or is it me that's gone? Anyway,
I'm still. Okay.
Too much imaging.
We're doing okay.
Okay, you're back. I can hear you now, or I'm back. When
great.
On your side of the screen, if you're, it always looks good on StreamYard on the other person's stream. So, okay, cool. So let's get into it. I want to hear your personal take. Where were you sitting? And how bad of a view is that as a live viewing experience? Because it feels like any stadium show is a bad spot to be in those. And Brian is gone again, so we'll go solo here for 1 second. I will let him come back, see if he reappears. But yeah, so I guess the first segment is the guys. Eyewitness of the event is not helpful if he's not there. But let's talk about, in the comments too, let me know. As we start, Brian, are you there?
Okay. Yes. Jesus Christ. Sorry. Okay. I guess that is me.
You're good. Hey, technology, usually it's 99% works and 1% it doesn't work. It's it sucks. So you're back. I see you moving around. So
nice.
Let's talk. So where were you sitting roughly? And then how bad of a viewing experience was that for you personally? Because I whenever I look at these huge crowds at stadium shows, I'm always like, man, it'd be cool to be there, but like you're just looking at the jumbotron the whole time, unless you're, especially like the way it was set up with the curving entrance, like. Man, so where were you? How was your experience viewing the product?
I mean, I guess it's like hard to describe the press box location. I mean, obviously it's kind of in that generic kind of like middle section. I was definitely in the third row, as far as I was in a third row in the very back corner of the press box. So that was interesting, but I kind of meandered and met some people, said hello to some folks. It was very, very cool to meet in person. Yeah, like the view overall, I think it was like fine, but like you said, you're going back and forth from watching like the Titantron and also like the ring. But if you've got a good phone and you're trying to capture a video or picture potentially, then that makes it easier. But like overall, as far as like just a pure like seating arrangement, considering the seat was completely free, I am not going to complain.
Well, there you go. And then any sort of and you're not the only one that got a free ticket, just to be clear, of members of the media. So anyone that wants to drop a bias line there, just know that that's not the case. I think you and I were talking offline. I think you're going to give an honest opinion here that if anyone wants to come back on that, I want to get that out of the way now. But I want to do a quick overview of the 5 matches, and then we'll break into the bigger, more important matches, right? Like, Bianca and Alex is not super important. I don't think we did talk about that more than your initial, top line take. But my view watching it at home was I was probably on the thumbs in the middle category for most of the show. So, the men's rumble I thought was fine, predictable with Cody winning. We'll obviously get into that big time. The Alexa Bianca match was kind of a nothing match. The pitch black match was, basically an utter disaster. I think most people thought, and it didn't have anything that made it stand out besides like some neon lights and then like the mist from Uncle Howdy hitting the thing there. And then women's match was fine, but again, predictable. And then the main event was fine. And then the angle was awesome. So that's kind of my top line take of the whole show. So kind of, obviously the 2 rumbles in the main event are what we'd like to get into, but any sort of, especially notes on what was anything more over than I portrayed it, anything like that killed the crowd more than I'm portraying, so kind of go into your whole, experience of all that stuff. But that's kind of my general take for the audience out there.
For sure. I'm with you. I think the post-match angle kind of definitely bumped up the potential grading of the overall show. And I think I had it maybe kind of like around like a C-, but obviously the post-match angle with Bloodline and Sammy was like fantastic. So I bumped it up to like a C+. Obviously, if you, I do have a in-person analysis available at PWTorch. You want to check that out. Just kind of my brief summary broken down in 3 different parts. If you want to check that out, it is available on the website right now. But yeah, like C+ overall, I think kind of like if I have to grade the card, I was, definitely surprised they started out with the men's rumble. So I was like, oh, okay, I just assumed they were going to start potentially like with the Roman, Sammy stuff, and then maybe close with the men's rumble. So it was definitely interesting to see the men's rumble open. I thought they did obviously a very good job with Gunther. Drew and Sheamus were fun. But there were obviously like moments. It just was kind of just there. There was very little crowd noise for people like Johnny Gargano. I'm trying to even remember exactly. Oh well, the fun stuff with Brock, that was really fun. He almost killed Santos. Obviously, there's been reports now, allegedly, that Brock's gotten a little heat for chunking people across the barrier, so that's kind of funny. And then Cody like winning, I think was obviously fine, predictable, but me kind of being pedantic about like just things in general, I wouldn't have had Cody at 30. I would have had him at 1. Or if you're gonna have Cody be 30, have him go against like this, eliminate all 7 monsters in there, because you had at one point Gunther, you had Sheamus, you had Drew, I think Braun was in there, and maybe Corbin was in there, Seth was in there. I think that would have been more of a better potential, like Cody overcoming like 7 monsters makes like for a better thing. But again, Cody was winning, didn't matter. So everybody was happy. The pop. I will say, like, one of my, I guess, favorite moments from the entire Rumble was getting to experience the Edge music live. I've always heard that was kind of like a, hey, if you're gonna have a experience with WWE, kind of seeing Edge like hearing on this day live is pretty dope.
Mhm.
So really enjoyed that. But like everything else, I mean, the women's Rumble was okay. I just like I can't remember other than Rhea winning. There's very little I can offer you to substance, just because if you want to circle back, I want to say the Mountain Dew match did actually kill the momentum for that show a little bit, because I mentioned to you off air, the match only went like barely, I don't think it even went 5 minutes, but just I didn't even really hear, like, I was there live with 45,000 people or whatever. Yeah, it was like 40, it was close to 45,000 people there, right?
Yeah, I mean, announced
There,
at 51 and some change, but WWE.
yes, but there was I heard oohs and ahs, but I wasn't hearing, there was no vague chance if this is awesome, holy shit, like not like none of that. Like it was just it was a it was glow in the dark mini golf that happened on a WWE PLE that potentially derailed the show. And God bless Bianca and Alexa for having to follow that, which what in my review I'd said that was pretty much wrestling happening in front of me, that just it was just nothing. And that's not on Bianca. She tries really hard. She had to make the best of this Alexa, Uncle Howdy, Bray Wyatt stuff the best she could. So yeah. And then obviously with the Sammy and Kevin and Roman, I think it was fine. I think it was definitely the weaker of their matches they've had together. I would have preferred them to kind of have, I think their match went close to 20 minutes, I think. Like, I think that if you split that in half and you maybe step that up and make that like a hardcore match, then I think that would have been just a hoot. But,
Mhm.
and I think they've obviously tried very hard. And if for those who thought, like, I was there live for the post match angle, unfortunately, I didn't actually get to see it live, because as they were counting 1, 2, 3 for Sammy and Roman, the PR staff of WWE were herding us together to go in the hobbles of the Alamo Dome for the media scrum. And so we didn't actually effectively get to see the Sammy angle live. We were watching kind of like the last moments on our phone, and we were just like, even in those brief moments, we could tell like how like awesome this was. And that was obviously the one thing I went back and got to do overall. But as far as like effectively watching the show, but people have asked, oh, how would you grade the Rumbles? I'm not like a Rumble historian. I'm probably not the person to ask. Maybe that's like a Wade question potentially, Tyler. But I would say I would probably put them kind of in that maybe tier 3, where it's like they're not like necessarily the worst, but they're not like up there as greatest all times either. So maybe like a tier 3 for both potentially. And just like something that really stuck out for me that I wrote in my review, I think like the presentation, the ambiance of WWE as far as the production, it's like, I mean, the Super Bowl type stuff, right? It just like, I couldn't believe like the amount of stuff that been able to do. And I just, from kind of a media standpoint, I appreciated like they've made the entire like experience felt like big time, right? So we go down in the media scrum. I really thought like I was in like a AFC type championship media scrum, just like how they had everything together. They were ready to go. And then I'm not sure if you saw, but your boy here got to lead off the media scrum. So that was pretty like out of like the 100 people there, that was kind of like surreal. And then I had to explain to my wife, like, yeah, so well, because my phone was exploding at that point, because everybody was like, oh my god, like I saw you on Peacock. So like I guess that like was pretty cool. And also people say, oh well, like like people have asked like what's it like to ask a question. I was like, well, when you don't know like the the parties coming in, it can be very difficult. But I did notice, obviously, during the match, Rhea was kind of like outside the ring, messing with her knee for a long time. And I was really worried about that. So that's what led to me asking her specifically about her health overall. No, I did not ask about Vince because.
Well, like, did they tell you no questions?
Okay. So, yeah, I'll try not to go on a long rant here on this. So I want to be perfectly clear. Like I know, I'm sure you've seen some of the discourse on like tough question to ask, blah blah blah. Like there was no question specific. Like the PR people said, "Oh, hey, don't ask this question." There was no banned questions of any kind, like at all. So people were welcome to ask whatever they want. Like I had people ask me directly, "Well, why didn't you ask Rhea about like Stephanie or Vince?" I just like that. To me, that's not like the time and place for that specific question. I mean, Rhea literally just won the Royal Rumble. Like, why would I be asking her about Stephanie or Vince? Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's be a little bit more self-aware about like who you're talking to. I had questions lined up for Triple H. They didn't pick me. There was over 100 people in these things. Like, you know what I mean? Like the AEW scrums, there's a third of that in there. Cause like I've been in like the Ring of Honor scrum. There wasn't that. I think there was maybe like 10 or 12 of us. In Vegas, I think there might have been 15 or 20 people, and Tony's going to make sure you get every question if you have a question asked. But like, it's not up to me, or it's not up to Tyler, it's not up to Wade. However, people want to ask a question. If you get approved by WWE and they feel like they want to ask a certain question, they're obligated to do so. Now, I've heard a couple silly ones, which not in the scrum Saturday, but like I've heard questions before in scrums where I'm just like, I don't know about that, man. I kind of roll my eyes a little bit on, but as long as they're not objectively bad and they're there, because that's another thing, guys. Like, you know, I'll break the fourth wall here. I'm not getting paid to go there. Like if people are willing to commit their time, money, and effort to go there, and if they want to ask a question to gain content for their Patreon, their website, however, then, you know, no harm, no foul. Like, would I have liked somebody to ask Triple H about the sale? Sure. Like, I had questions about kind of Triple H, about morale and like, you know, background, like what is he doing to improve the locker room morale, stuff like that. Like I just wasn't picked. So, and you know, when you aren't picked, you can't ask the question. And I guess my overall, to kind of wrap this up, Tyler, hopefully I'm not going too long, but like to me, those who did kind of, I guess, attempt to dunk on people asking questions or, saying, you know, hey, these people aren't journalists. Yes, I've said on record many times, I'm definitely not a journalist. I'm a contributor. It's totally two different things. And when I'm going to go and, you know, fortunate enough to ask a question, I'm going to try to ask something like one that could potentially interest me, but interest others as well. And, you know, I'm also going to be self-aware enough to say I'm not going to also waste a question if I can. I'm not going to ask Tony Khan about CM Punk because he's like, you know, things like that where it's like, okay, they've already said on record they're not going to answer that question, so why would I waste the one opportunity to ask a question and then that let you know you're done, like no moss. So, but you know, it's I would just offer and push back on those people that say, you know, why didn't you ask Vince related questions? I would offer them just to go, like request credentials and go. Please get those questions asked. Like if we're not doing it properly in the correct manner, I would love for them to go and show me how it's done.
Yeah, and like let's be honest, like you're probably not going to get a second credential if you are that person in the scrum too. Like there's a give and a take and things like that. That's why I've not offered to be a representative for the Torch in that capacity because, you know, I represent the brand too. Not that I'd be like, you know, overly aggressive, but, you know, I probably would ask a question that would not put me in a good light with certain circles and then might avoid people like you in the future getting credentials too. So there's all like a give and take in that system too. And that's not to critique anybody. And, you know, to ask those questions. And like, yeah, you're not going to ask Rhea Ripley, like, hey, what do you think about almost being sold to the Saudis? Would you still work for the company? That's like kind of that's a question you don't want to ask. That's like, me and you came on here and did reckless speculation when that was going on, but we were pretty straightforward, like every 15 minutes relaying what we were doing, and that we didn't have any actual information. So for a member of the talent and things like that, yeah, it's different if it's Tony Khan, if it's Vince McMahon, if it's Nick Khan, if it's Paul Levesque. It's a different series of questions than if it's the talent that's there. So that's what I would say back as well. So it's all about, like you said, the context, the time, the place, all that sort of stuff. But let's get into the Rumble, as you are. You can see your work on both Honor Club and Peacock. Brian, you're featured on both. So that was almost how I opened the show, but I didn't. I forgot, so I'm going to get it in now. But let's talk. I think the main two things from the Rumble, in my opinion, are the Cody situation and then the angle post, the Bloodline angle post match, right? Which you have gone back and watched. I don't want to put you on the spot, or you know enough about it. Okay, cool. Because you had to go to the basement of the Alamo Dome, right, where Pee Wee Herman Spike actually was, right? You can confirm. So, done with the stupid jokes now. So, the Cody stuff, I agree with you 100%. Him coming out at 30 is, I've said this a lot, and people that watch consistently, you know who you are. So thank you as always. But no, I say a lot that Jon Moxley has I think the best current day instincts on what makes a babyface, at least in AEW and probably WWE as well, right? Like if I'm in town, I go ask Jon Moxley, like, hey, this is what I'm planning to do. Do you think this works? If he says yes, I'll do it. If he says no, I'll be like, okay, well, what should I do to make it a little better, right? And I think Cody is the exact opposite of having good instincts on what makes a babyface work in 2023. And I think that's a lot of issue he had in AEW. And I was a opponent, I guess, of Cody in a lot of his decisions. The belt, not going for it again, the not turning heel, the having the stuff with the Codyverse, blah, blah, blah. That's not to be my horn. I'm just telling you like where I lay on this Cody stuff. So I have a predisposition to not like what he's doing currently more than most, I would say. But like coming out at 30 and overcoming the odds and doing the Roman in 2015 Royal Rumble kind of ish stuff, the John Cena back during the Super Cena days. He came back from injury. That helps tremendously. People liked it. But I just think that we're not in a good spot, if we go 3 months from now where Cody is, right? I think the crowd's going to go with him through this run and be behind him. But even if you look at Monday on Raw, him coming out, doing a same sort of promo. And yes, I had some tongue-in-cheek tweets about how you could replace Anthony Gogo's name with Roman Reigns, and that would be the same promo that he did during that feud of like kind of the platitudes of babyface-ness that he is, the pomp, the circumstance, the 80s-ness of it all, which works, but it does get grating over time. And I was hoping for a little bit more growth, kind of like we saw with MJF, not to compare the two, but like, there's a lot of complaints about MJF and the way he set up his feuds and the way his character was, and he's kind of pivoted in the last couple of weeks. So I guess that is to say, I think you're in the similar spot, at least with the Rumble. Where are you like long-term with this Cody character? And like, do you think the crowd is going to have a different opinion than me? And that is definitely okay to say. So I'm not putting you on a spot here, but like, do you think I'm just a guy who's looking a year from now and how this is going to be a problem, and that's when it's going to be a problem, or he's going to be this babyface and it's going to work for a long time? Like, where do you stand with the WWE universe, so to say?
Well,
take it.
No, it's funny that you're setting me up pretty well there, Tyler, because in my write-up for my Rumble experience, I did actually mention kind of like the overall atmosphere. And the WWE fan right now, I think it's a different animal than you and I. Probably a different animal than everybody in the chat, because the days of rebelliousness of those crowds that yearning Daniel Bryan to win the Royal Rumble and be at WrestleMania, I don't think those people are gone. You're not going to really hear a lot of people dissatisfied with everything. I wrote in my write-up, if you look at the fan base now, they're not necessarily like bored, but they'll just kind of let wrestling happen in front of them and be kind of okay with it. And then maybe they'll pop for the finish, and then they'll maybe kind of throw on a little golf clap, but they have to really not be interested to not like give anything any noise. I mean, the Bray stuff is interesting because with the amount of popularity the merchandise Bray Wyatt has sold, the fans didn't really get up for that, but that was also something pretty unique, and that might be even outside the normal WWE like sports entertainment fan. If that was a wrestling normal 10-minute hardcore match, I bet they make a little bit more noise for Bray. I just don't think we're in a time right now where I think these fans were pretty satisfied with the product. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I'm with you with if you look at this Cody character overall, there is going to be a time where me and you and maybe someone like Zach will watch, Raw, and it's like, okay, there's not really any depth to what Cody's saying. He's kind of doing the same thing. Like, he might have a fire up promo, but his promos and cadence are kind of the same. He might get into a brawl. He's open to having impromptu matches. Great, but like, I don't know if there's like long-term any depth in there. And, and I guess in this audience-based eyes, this might be kind of like a Hulk Hogan, like not turning heel, you know what I mean? Because as long as he's getting cheers, I think he's going to just keep on doing what he's doing. And I don't think he'll have any reason to turn. I mean, I think a turn would be interesting. It would create some new type of direction with his character. If the plan is eventually for Cody still to beat Roman at the Rumble, I don't know what you do with Cody after that. I presume, you could have folks like Theory. You could have, maybe Seth again, maybe Bobby Lashley. I would say right now, the Sammy and Bloodline stuff, that's really a lot. That's hotter than Cody coming back. And Cody potentially beating Roman after like 3 years of the title should be a bigger story. It should be like a hotter angle, but it's just not. And that's not necessarily Cody's fault. I mean, it's unfortunate the injury Cody had, and then obviously the ascendance of Sammy and the Bloodline. They've overtaken the, I guess kind of like the best angle in the company that they've had probably in decades. And if it was me, I would have honestly preferred Sammy to win the Rumble. Quite honestly, that's just me. Because you can have Sammy be a short-term champion, and then Roman could take the belt back from him. I think if you're trying to make a moment, I think Sammy winning the title from Roman, I think that means more than, let's say, Sammy and Kevin Owens beating the Usos for one of the tag belts at Mania, because they don't care about the tag division because they've already declared they're going to split up the tag belts. I know, obviously, the angle on Saturday at the Rumble makes everything more interesting potentially, but I thought just kind of let's really strap this towards the Rocket and let Sammy win the title, because he's only had one. I think he's won the IC belt twice now since he's been in the company, give or take. I could be wrong, but somebody let me know in the chat if that's not correct. Like, why not give him that superpower run, especially if he's gonna retransform to his baby face self. But I'm with you long term with the Cody stuff potentially getting old, but it could still just be fine because this audience is pretty content with the product. I mean, you look at the numbers, like the ratings are, stellar right now, stellar. Like, and I don't really see any mass changes. Like, I would say I'll say tweaks, slight tweaks since Triple H has been in charge creatively, but it's not like, to me, not anything like huge. You know what I mean? Like, they've been not getting in their own way, which is kind of bare bones stuff. I don't think Paul Levesque has been doing anything to like break the mold as far as being a head booker or anything. So I don't know. We'll see. But I know I've kind of rambled there for a little bit, but I'm with you on your similar concerns with Cody long term.
For sure. And like him going heel, I think the only way that happens is, do we know the length of this contract? Is it 3 years? Obviously time not served with the pec injury, I would presume. Right. So that puts him right. Let's just hypothetically say it's 3 years, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of that'd probably be a point where this audience would kind of grow tired of this character. Maybe 2 years in, and then you stretch it out for another year. and then he can go right back to AEW and be a babyface and the returning champion. He can kind of just like jump company to company and never turn heel because he's just excited. Everyone's excited for him to be back. So that'd be my trajectory there. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think if I had to guess, if I had to like take people, because I think everyone out there, if they're honest with themselves, whether it's 51-49 or 90-10 on a preference, 5-year deal, says Hazan. So that makes more sense. So
thank you.
So forget what I said. But, no matter what percentage you would give it on your AEW versus your WWE fan allegiance, I'd say if you're in the 51-49 or more AEW, I think that type of fan would vote for Sammy to beat Roman at WrestleMania. I'm in that boat. I think you're in that boat from what you said. And I think if you're the opposite way for 51 WWE, 49 AEW, I think the Cody situation is something that you're more open to, and telling that story and having that be kind of like a traditional big WWE moment where the babyface gets the big win over the heel who's been the title, Hogan beating, body slamming Andre, like that level of something that hasn't happened or it's been building up to that point, and you crown a new babyface, etc. I think it doesn't work long term just because I've seen Cody in that environment and in the character. I hope to be wrong. I think wrestling's better if he's a good champion and doing new cool stuff in WWE. So we'll see. But like you said a little bit ago, the stuff with the bloodline was the main event of the show. That's why it went on last. It was after the match, and that story with Sammy and Roman is so much more impactful. It's one of the best stories WWE's ever told, period. Not in the last 5 years, not in the last 10 years, ever in the history of the company, is this bloodline story. Sammy's a big part of that. Roman's obviously a main part of that. And to presumably have Sammy and Roman in Montreal do it at Elimination Chamber, and then have Cody come in afterwards and potentially beating Roman, which I don't think is a certainty at this point, at WrestleMania.
Really? You don't think it's certain?
I don't. But, we'll see.
Wow.
It depends, like, what you want to do. Like, how long does Roman want to do what he's doing, right? Because I think if I'm Triple H, I think that it makes a good babyface to not come in at 30 in the Rumble when I probably would have done that to begin with. But then I don't also have that babyface go forward and beat Roman in the first try. If he's gets screwed over and then has to do it a second time to do it, whatever. I think there's lots of good stories to tell, and WWE is better than AEW to subvert expectations, especially in the main event. So you don't know who it is. I think that's one big plus of the company versus AEW. But anyway, sorry, I'm going on long here now too. But that storyline, and I want to talk about that now since you've watched it. On the Royal Rumble, if anyone is not a VIP member here, I would listen to the VIP post show where Todd Martin and me are in agreement, and he went down why he didn't like this exact exchange and how it transpired as much as it could have been, how well it could have been. And I don't want to give it away for anyone that's not. It's like a cheap tease to go VIP and check that out. But essentially, the motivations of this Sammy character were not kind of matched with what happened there, right? So the whole this whole Sammy character is him wanting to be accepted by the group, and he's done anything to be accepted. And it's not like about what's right and wrong, right? And Todd said it much better. So I want to implore you to go to that. But like, I thought this was like, the story's been almost perfect, and I liked the moment itself. I'll remember it fondly. But I think there was like they hit like 90% of the 100% they could have hit with the story and the way they did it, and the motivations of Sammy and the story there. But I guess that's all rounded about. I think WWE is making a mistake if things are on course, right? If Sammy takes on Roman, loses, and then him and Kevin Owens have a tag match against the Usos or Jimmy and Solo, I think would be more likely at this point. And then Cody takes on Roman. I will hold to this. I think that is not as good of WrestleMania as you possibly could have had. And I think that's disappointing for me personally. So I guess Sammy in that moment, were you 100% in on that, on what happened at the Rumble? And then, I guess if you want to comment on anything else I said there, but really the main event, post-match stuff, your thoughts on that?
I mean, obviously everybody's going to go crazy for the Shield lore. Like, everybody's going to go crazy for that. I mean, I like a little, if I could still, old phrase from Vince, a little blood and guts, like you're at a PLE, you're not on live television. This is the one time you could have just beaten the hell out of Sammy. I didn't really like the beatdown. Like it was, it was fine, but like that was something monumental. And obviously the Jay like swerving potentially, like that was an interesting twist, but like you still had 3-on-1. Like you couldn't have like they left Sammy there for dead with a chair, but I just felt like there was a chance Roman could have busted him open, just pounding on his head. I'm kind of deranged like that. I just felt like there could have been a better moment where, let's say, if Sammy's bloodied up, and then maybe they leave him on near Kevin Owens where they're trying to reach out to each other, but they can't because Kevin's still handcuffed to the ring. So like you were saying, it was still like it was pretty good, not perfect. I mean, if you still think it's perfect, that's one like minor thing I have. I do have concerns, especially with the Elimination Chamber, because I can't recall which Uso, but there's I don't know if it's Jimmy. That Jimmy can't travel, or is it Jade that can't travel?
I believe it's Jimmy, but
okay. Well, there is an Uso that can't travel to Canada, which
I would say you can't travel easily. I kind of did a little research on this.
Okay.
So there's ways you can get approved. You can get like especially WWE would have a lot of clout to pull in that capacity.
Kind of like a visa or something.
Quebec is more tight than like Ontario, as an example. And those are both like Ontario is more tight than Saskatchewan or Alberta, right? Like in Alberta, you could probably get in. Montreal's or Quebec is a little tighter. So I would expect Jimmy not to be there, but he could be there also. So it's not 100%.
Okay. Looks like we're getting Jimmy Uso in the chat.
Hazan is the torch, at least for me personally, is my my fact checker. So I appreciate
him. Thank you, Hassan. Appreciate that.
But yeah, I mean, so go ahead. Sorry, I think you were still on a.
No. But yeah, I think that would have been kind of like the only thing. The Shield stuff, I mean, it's still very good. I felt like there was an opportunity where you could have made that even more impactful. Just as far as like a beatdown, I thought it was like it was fine, but I just for as long as they built that up, you want this like I was trying to think of like I guess like famous beatdowns that God, I'm having a brain fart.
Yeah, you want like Rock handcuffing Mankind and hit him 10 hits.
Yeah, pretty
without
much.
the 10 actual hits to the head, right? We don't be hitting everyone in the head with chairs.
Yes, something to that effect. Yes, of course.
Yeah, it was just more for me. It was like the beatdown stuff was fine. It was more that and I implore people to go back and watch like just the story that's been told. I thought it's been so good, and it's like what Sammy's motivations. Think of him as like a character in a movie or a TV show, right? Like the character, his arc, his motivations, why he's doing what he's doing, right? Because Sammy was a heel, and then he wanted to join the bloodline. He's kind of turned face in that capacity, right? Like he was doing conspiracy theories with Logan Paul this time last year, and then he was fighting Johnny Knoxville in kind of a comedy act, and he's joined this group to be taken seriously, to be a member, to be accepted somewhere because him and Kevin Owens, that was his guy, and they've fallen apart many times. And, that is all there. It just needed a little bit more, I think, explanation. Not in that moment, but of like why he was making that choice of like, what am I doing with my life? Is this the right thing to do? And it's 90% that. That's why I'm not like super critical about it. It's just they've been so on point with a lot of this that I thought, you could see this was getting accelerated in the last couple of weeks, especially with the trial from the Friday to Monday change in Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns from that Friday SmackDown to that the trial of Sammy. That it's kind of felt like this was coming. It just is a little disappointing that at the finish line, so to say, that it was just not like a total grand slam. It was a triple home run, not a grand slam. So, but yeah. Anything else on the Rumble before we move on?
Yeah, actually, I do have one thing that I guess it's been kind of.
And I have one thing too. So remind me, I have one thing to ask you too.
Yes. So on the Rumble, so after Monday, there was obviously the tease that Rhea Ripley was going to announce her opponent for Mania. I did not like them teasing the stuff with Bianca and not delivering that. I didn't really care for that. And just the fact that we're getting Ripley, who is a heel, de facto heel, that's gaining popularity for Charlotte Flair, who is a babyface, but she's a really bad babyface. I don't know how I feel about this and Charlotte's work lately. I know she's coming back from obviously her extended time off. I feel like she hasn't looked that sharp. I'm a little worried on the quality of the match. I felt like you had your megastar versus megastar match with Rhea and Bianca, and I felt like in a situation like that, that's like a rivalry that you could have like in WWE forever. And people would be completely fine watching Rhea and Bianca face off with each other because you had the Rumble moment that they had for the year before. So why can't we just build off that? Why you teased it, so give it to us. I don't think anybody was really jonesing to see Charlotte Flair and Rhea at WrestleMania. I worry about the quality of the match. They will have to dramatically fix that dynamic right now, because if they're trying to say Charlotte's a babyface, then this thing is going to be in trouble. Because I don't know if anybody remembered, the build to Bianca and Sasha was wretched. That was awful. And luckily, both of them are above all of that, where they somehow created one of the best WrestleMania matches in history. That build to that entire match was one of the worst feuds, build-ups to a feud I can recall. And I worry that this could have similar permutations potentially.
I think so. And that's we're on the road to WrestleMania, and that's if you're looking at the main stories, right, that's why I'm kind of down on where the trajectory of where I think it's going to be a probably above average WrestleMania. I think it could have been a top 5 WrestleMania all time with some storylines that you could have chosen to do. And, when you think about Charlotte and Rhea, and you think of Cody and Roman and some of these bigger matches that are all of them could have been better, right? Bianca and Rhea is a better story overall. And then you could do Becky and Charlotte and Ronda a third time, whatever. That could be your B program. But, there's a lot of things that I think are B's that could have been A pluses on these feuds and getting there and all that stuff. So I think all your points are valid. The last question I had for you about your Rumble experience and just in general is, there was a musical performance before the main event. You were there live. It was one of the worst things I've ever seen on WWE TV. I'd never heard of this person before. Hardy, I believe, is the name of the individual. To go from one of the biggest angles of all time and then a half hour before was literally one of the worst things I've ever seen on WWE TV was this guy's performance. They really sweetened the crowd on the Peacock broadcast. Could you hear a pin drop in that arena, or was there booing? I know there was not cheering. So give me your live perspective on that for that horrible performance.
I'm going to show how out of touch I am, Tyler. I had no idea. I was like, wait, Matt Hardy is...
No, you're not out of touch. No one knows who that is. It was a rap country new metal band?
I've never heard of the individual. And the thing is, in the build-up to the show, I can't recall them even advertising that, unless that was a last-minute get. I can't remember. It was just kind of there. I didn't really hear any cheers. I didn't hear any boos. It was just kind of just there happening. And if you put everything in a vacuum, and that is kind of amazing, that occurred. And Uncle Howdy in the Mountain Dew Pitch Black match happened in the same night. But yeah, I would say relatively, you could definitely hear conversations below the press box during the performance.
Okay. I also make sure I wasn't crazy, but yeah, it was bad. So I looked him up on Spotify, Hardy. He's got 6.8 million monthly listeners, 6.6 million monthly listeners. So there are people listening to him. That is, I would say mid-tier on our artist, but he's a niche guy. So, so there you go. I just want to make sure I got that in. All right, let's move on to Dynamite from Wednesday. Usually we review Dynamite a little bit afterwards. I think it was under 1 million, right? I don't know if you have the rating. I don't have the rating up. It was 900 something. It was second in the demo behind an NBA game. Usually it's third in the demo.
Yes.
So I think the overall rating is not as important as being second, as it's usually third to NBA games. So that's a big improvement, I would say. As you brought up, WWE doing great in the ratings, had record revenue. Was that yesterday? Today was the conference call. So both companies I think are on good track, and we're definitely not in the down period in wrestling, which is always good. So yeah, Dynamite. Lots going on here. Obviously, we're on the road to Revolution as much as we are on the road to WrestleMania. We are now in the key time of getting in there. Obviously, we've known the main event for some time, and now in the next coming weeks, we're going to get the other 13 matches set up, probably 3 or 4 a week on average. I wish I was being facetious there with that, but yeah, so there's a lot on the show, and the main 2 things, right, are the MJF Danielson storyline, but then also the 2 matches that opened and closed the show. So just go like chronological here. We opened with Jon Moxley and Hangman Adam Page in a rubber match in Dayton, Ohio, at the Nutter Center, as Taz could not control himself throughout the show between the Nutter Center.
Best.
Yeah, and I thought as having been to a couple shows there before, it's not my hometown by any stretch, but I think that arena looks good on TV, especially the way AEW shoots. Like seeing the crowd right up in your face. It was very indicative of those old arenas that you don't really get very much anymore. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was positive. Crowd was, Corpus Christi level, I would say. That's kind of my default for like quiet crowds in WWE.
Yeah.
So, but it's a C town, and I can say that as being regionally close to it. So anyway, I really thought this was going to be a no DQ or a double count out, double disqualification. We're going to get a rubber match at Revolution.
Yeah.
And I was, as shocked as you can be watching Dynamite. Usually I'm not wrong. Usually most people that watch the product are not wrong on how these matches go. So I was surprised, and I'm curious where it's going. The chat is, popping with what's going on with Hangman Page. So where were you on the match? Where are you on the story? Where are you on Page? Kind of wherever you want to go with it. But it was more interesting, this result, than what I thought was going to happen, which is usually a good thing. But I could be convinced it's not as good a thing.
I'm going to go ahead and show my cards here. I love Jon Moxley. I think you had mentioned him earlier. I think he's the smartest, coolest babyface in all of professional wrestling. Everybody should want to be Jon Moxley. If you have a babyface idea, you should always ask Jon Moxley if this sounds stupid, because he will say, yeah, that's stupid. Don't do that. Because I always hear shows now using Moxley as a comparison for WWE. Like, would Jon Moxley be afraid of Uncle Howdy, or, something of those effects. But yeah, the match ruled. I thought it was actually better than any of the matches that they've had so far. It tickled me that both men were somehow mad at one another that they won with the wrestling move. So this feud must continue. Shout out to Moxley's dad walking out with him, which I was like, Papa Mox, okay. Like, let's.
It kind of looks like James Ellsworth, if you like. And I was like, not exactly, but he kind of looks like. There's another good comparison of like someone in media that I see, but I was like, oh, that's not good. Yeah. So
yeah.
Anyway,
once Papa Mox was coming out, I was like, okay, so Moxley's definitely winning this. There's no way.
And it's like a 40-minute drive from where he lives. So.
For a 40-minute drive, so you knew Mox was leading this, and I really like the depth of the Hangman character, because he's still obviously the self-conscious nervous cowboy trying to find his way back into the elite potentially. He's not necessarily getting like I guess annoying, but he's obviously getting frustrated because he's still mad at Moxley, I think, for calling him a kid. And obviously there's the, getting concussed for a little bit. So that's the added juice to that storyline. I thought that was going to be, I was with you. I assumed match 3 was going to be some type of stepped match at the pay-per-view, which to me, I thought this was going to line up with Lights Out the entire time. But now I'm guessing, like Zach mentioned in the chat there, this seems like this is either going to be Last Man Standing or Texas Deathmatch, which essentially they are kind of like the same thing, because Texas Deathmatch, you do have to make it through the count. And knowing the history with those matches between Page and Moxley, that could be really good table setter potentially for the I think if you that could be a really fun match to have on first for the Revolution crowd.
That's where I would put it for sure. Yeah, I mean, definitely not a lights out match. I cannot do an hour Iron Man lights out match. I don't think I have the capacity. Got to ask Hazan's specific Ohio question. So Troy is where they're going to have their first house show in Troy, Ohio. That's like south of Youngstown. If you don't know where Youngstown is, it's like on the Pennsylvania Ohio border. So there's that. It's a very small town, I would say.
Gotcha.
It's like a third. It's like a fourth of the size of Dayton, which is a small town as well. So, but yeah, kind of the same page. It just joke there. I've always been critical of the presentation of the Hangman character on TV, and I know that the rebuttal is going to be that of the 900,000 people that watch AEW, I think a vast majority of them are kind of aware of the history of him, are smart enough to know the subtext of what he's doing and all that stuff. But I would just like, a little bit more, just like I want a little bit more explained on the Sammy and his motivations with Kevin Owens. Like if you're someone who watches the Rumble every year but doesn't watch the weekly TV, that moment was not as impactful as someone who watched Kevin Owens turn on Sami Zayn in NXT, right? I mean, there's just a lot more history there. Someone that watched them have ladder wars with the Briscoes in ROH. There's just a lot more there that you could stretch out here. And I think the Hangman stuff has worked on the surface level more so than it usually has. But, if he joins up with the elite guys or whatever, it seems like they're going different ways too, right? Like he tends to be going a little more Moxley type character, which is not a heel, not a baby face, right? He's just like a badass who's going around and beating people, which I can get down with that on the character. But, him joining up with the elite right now, I don't know if that's the greatest option. I know you didn't really float that, but it feels like that is certainly on the table, and they feel like they're still a mess from a presentation and like, what am I supposed to, I'm supposed to cheer these guys like that, and that's not what we're talking about here. So we can table that for a second. But I feel like Hangman going and more being a John Moxley type character on his own would make more sense than him being the fourth wheel of the elite from a long-term standpoint. So yeah, the match surprised me. It was great. I mean, Moxley's got singles losses to MJF, CM Punk, and Adam Page, right? Is that the list? Yep. So pretty good list to be on. I still think, if Moxley is out of the title picture for a while because MJF is the champion, right? You don't want to go back to that. Adam Page still feels like a top 3 babyface. Even losing here, I think he gets the win at Revolution and gets the respect of John Moxley is kind of where I'm at. I don't know, are you kind of there as well with your death match? Is that how you book it right now, or would you book it Moxley goes over?
No, I think Hanger going over is the call. And plus, poor Mox, he's due this vacation, man. Him and Renee need to get that vacation.
Yeah.
That guy has been waiting to go on a month sabbatical for about 6 months now. So let Mox and Renee have some time off already. Yeah. And plus, Moxley coming back potentially as a heel, very interested. I'm into that. I'm into that very much.
Yeah. Well, cool. And then that also makes like Wheeler and Claudio can do ROH stuff because there's an ROH pay-per-view. Like late March
31st.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's the Friday. I keep forgetting it's the Friday before Mania. So interesting that AEW is doing that. I guess ROH, right, would be the argument, not AEW, but okay. So let's go to the main event, and then we can talk about the world title scene after that, and then anything else you kind of want to get in between there. But we had Darby taking out Samoa Joe in a no holds barred, which is like, I have a lot of gripes with things in wrestling, but like every match is essentially a no holds barred match, right? Because there's very few holds that would, unless you're like fish hooking somebody, right, that would get you DQ'd.
Right.
So just, I don't know why the difference of just not wanting to call everything a no DQ match, I guess would be I've had a lot of editors, Wade, that, change, if you say too many words, you say the same word, you got to change up like, Brock Lesnar or the Beast Incarnate or whatever. Right? That's why people have monikers, because you don't want to say the same thing about the same person over and over again. But anyway, that's my little thing that we'll move on from. But we had Joe, we had Sammy in a Darby match. But man, this felt like even like a Darby up to 11, if that's even possible, with some of the moves he was taking, and Joe too with the thumbtack. Sure, if the Danielson Thatcher match, I think no matter what on this show, and this is why I like AEW, that there were the 3, I would say, main styles of pro wrestling were on display in that show. It was the brawling, hard hitting, strong style match. You had the catch style match, and then you had the hardcore match here.
Yep.
and I'm a hardcore match guy, so I loved it. I'm sure most people probably thought the Danielson Thatcher match was more up their angle, at least on this chat. But anyway, again, same theme as the first match. I thought Darby was going to win, and I thought he was going to continue his good run that he's been on and tell more of a story with Sting, his retirement throughout the year, and that stuff. And then Joe won. I mean, as is not a surprise because of the way Joe's been booked, the way he's been used, all that stuff. But Joe won, which was surprising to me. In the one, it's not. I'm open to see where it goes, but then Wardlow coming out and challenging him, I just felt like all of that did not need the belt around it to be impactful. And that was like the only thing I thought was a negative of that. And I think Darby having, not just doing a tag or a trios match with Sting at the pay-per-view, instead defending that belt would be more impactful. But where did you stand on the match and everything I just said there?
All right. Well, I'll try and make this quick. I have a lot of Darby lore. So it seems like anytime Darby does something super insane, I'm there in Austin live when he does it. So I was in Austin for the coffin match that he had versus Ethan Page. Was fantastic, awesome live. Yeah. And like I had to explain to the missus like why Darby's got essentially a fish hook of the ring in his mouth as Ethan Page is trying to kill him. So that was wonderful. Yeah. I was also there in Austin present when I guess this was more, Sting and Darby were a part of it, but I was there when Jeff Hardy jumped off the ledge of a window onto onto a table on the Butcher and Blade, which was I swear, Tyler, that's still one of the loudest wrestling pops I think I've ever heard in my life. And that was only maybe 3,000, like 300, like maybe like 3 and some change of people. So just nutty stuff. So yeah, I'm with you. This was Darby on 11. I'm a little like, I don't know. Like, I guess you could have really gotten, this was a pick'em, I guess, essentially. I loved sure. This was probably the greatest, shortest run in AEW history, like out of anybody. Just fantastic stuff. I think the rehabilitation of Samoa Joe as a character, this is probably one of Tony Khan's greatest booking accomplishments like ever, because I remember the groans when Samoa Joe was signed, just, people saying he was washed, what have you. And, that was obviously something I asked him in the ROH scrum in December. And he had referenced, hey, it's hard to be, consistent when you're injured. And, he was off filming Twisted Metal. So, and if he's not wrestling every other week, it's hard to build that consistency. I'm not really sure the age of Samoa Joe, but I mean, God, he looks in prime form right now. He's killing it right now. And King of Television gimmick is just fantastic. Love the King, hail the King of Television, bend the knee to the King of Television. Like every time you see him, like you have to address him as Your Highness every time. So now the stuff with Wardlow, I'm kind of with you. It is, I don't know if it's a little early to run that back. I feel like Wardlow, he needs something. I don't know what he needs. I feel like there's a tweak that needs to be made. I don't know if it's necessarily like his style, or maybe if this was an opportunity where maybe Wardlow could have gone away for a little bit and maybe rehabbed on like a direction, on like a character overall. I don't know if I really want to see him and Joe.
I laugh because I agree. It's just funny to say it that way. Like it'd be nice to get a character. Yeah, I mean.
And I honest to God, Tyler, feel bad for Wardlow because unfortunately he is kind of like a victim of circumstance because all the stuff that summer, he had all the momentum in the world, and then the MJF stuff kind of happened. So that's not on him. It just, stuff didn't unfortunately align all the way that it should have for him. And he's kind of like in this weird phantom zone right now. And hopefully we can kind of figure it out for him. I mean, he's got kind of a Frankie Kazarian haircut now. So I don't know if that adds any depth to his character per se, but I'm willing to let this play out. Like for me, like the direction, if we're, throwing out predictions, fantasy booking revolution, if Will Hobbs is not winning the TNT title at that pay-per-view in his hometown, something has gone terribly wrong. Because I think if you have Will Hobbs versus Samoa Joe, that would be a big meaty men slapping meat brouhaha. I like sign me up for that if that's an option on the card.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I don't know. It just like even like a Joe and Hobbs, in even though they're both heels, like that match by itself is more appealing to me than a triple threat. Like just anything right now with Wardlow doesn't feel impactful. It felt like they were in Ohio. He's from Cleveland, right? Everyone just like Texas, right? Same thing. Like all these cities are far apart. You could be from Houston and they could be in San Antonio and be like, oh, he's back in his home state. It's like, okay, it's forever away from each other. But
yes,
it felt like that was the place for him to come back because they were in his home state, et cetera. That's what Tony Khan loves to do. And it felt too soon. It felt like, I don't know how long you've been off TV, like 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, maybe longer, but like it didn't feel very long. And I think that's a negative. It's kind of the opposite of Adam Cole, right? He was probably off TV for 6 months and it felt like he had been off for years, in my opinion, because his Wardlow, unfortunately, to me, was more of in a Bobby Fish zone of like, oh yeah, I forgot he's not even on TV anymore, and he's with them, right? So that's not to say like they're the same people off air, Bobby Fish and Wardlow, but I think that some sort of redefining of Wardlow, getting away from the character that was essentially ruined by MJF's shenanigans at Double or Nothing, and that's I think undebatable whether the MJF characters come around and it's worked out in the end, I guess, but it still did irreparable damage to that Wardlow character and what he stood for, and that needed to be reestablished. And maybe losing here and then going away and then coming back, I don't know, maybe that helps, but I just feel like you can tell when Tony Khan is into something big time and then he like loses interest, kind of, I think like all of us do in some things, but like, I enjoy video games, but sometimes, and there's probably parallels with like other forms of media, but like I'll be playing a game for like 20 hours and it takes 40 hours to beat. And I'm like, I'm done with this. And I don't finish the game, right? It feels like kind of Tony Khan is like that with his wrestlers sometimes. And I feel like I can feel that as a viewer, which I think is a problem. And also to answer your question, Samoa Joe is 43. That's why I gave you that little hand motion. So, but yeah, it looks like a spring Samoan chicken, I would say. So,
oh yes.
The other things on the show, the one thing I don't watch Being the Elite. I don't know if you do.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Did the Cassidy moan? Has that been established on that? Because that was one of the most jarring things. I thought it was hilarious. I went back and watched it a couple of times, but I just imagined like, I know Wade well, and I didn't do the post that night, but I assume Wade was clutching his pearls tremendously when that happened. So I think that's like, again, just like a sensibility and like that is the immaturity of that group and why they're not like main stars. Like John Moxley would never allow someone to go do that in his ear.
Right.
But it's like, it feels funny for like a B comedy program, which is kind of what the Elite would prefer to do, it seems. So I guess has that been established? And we don't need to spend a lot of time with it. I just could not let it be unspoken on the show. The moment of Nick Cassidy.
I believe that's where it's originated from. I can't recall which particular segment or show it developed from, but I believe from what, like, I haven't seen the last couple of weeks BTE overall, but from what I saw people saying that's where it like started. But yeah, I did giggle quite a bit as well when he made that kind of very erotic moan in Kenny Omega's ear as Kenny Omega doesn't have a shirt on, which I think that popped me a little bit more. And they're kind of like comedy not geeks, but they're kind of like those B level foes that can be kind of silly like this. Stokely is very like mad because I forget the line Stokely had on against Kenny. It was very Stokely, very funny. So yeah. I didn't really. If people got mad because that happened, you have to welcome yourself and be vulnerable to a little silliness and understand the context of like why that took place. But yeah,
I'd say if Timothy Thatcher lost and then moaned in Bryan Danielson's ear, that'd probably be a problem.
Yes, for sure.
It is placed where it was on the show, and I think those titles, the trios titles in general, no matter who has them, water down the rest of the tag division as we've seen. But So let's talk, Danielson, Thatcher. If you want to talk anything about that match, obviously it was good. And Thatcher is a talent. I'm surprised that Noah was the place to scoop him up of all the talent and of where he is. And feels very much like he'd work in Japan with Zack Sabre Jr. You could have like a match every 6 months with those guys, and it could be a classic. But where are you on now that it is official that we have a 1 hour Ironman match as the main event for Revolution between MJF and Bryan Danielson? Where are you on where this feud is? What is your percentage likelihood that MJF walks out the champion at Revolution? Do you feel like, and where are you right now on the MJF title run, I guess, are my key questions to you, Brian.
I think we're in that phase where, we're still cooking a little bit, but, let MJF cook, because I think we're about to get in that phase where this is Brian's last match he has to win to guarantee his title match versus MJF at Revolution. So after that, I think we're going to get a lot of heavy promos that I think some people have criticized MJF for, which I'll sit there and watch MJF all day, every day, because he's the best on the stick in wrestling. That's just, to me, just the way he approaches, he studies, and articulates everything. He's great. So I think we're about to get in that phase where I think I've seen folks kind of groan and kind of say, oh, AEW is kind of using the, similar tropes where, in order to get a title shot, you have to win X amount of matches or beat X amount of people, blah, blah, blah. But, if you're complaining about seeing Bryan Danielson consistently every week, then wrestling is probably not for you, because he's great. Shout out to his match with Timothy Thatcher. I think Thatcher has like one of the best mean guy faces in all professional wrestling. I was actually a big fan of his last run and actually NXT with Ciampa when they were kind of doing the old guy, like old grizzled veterans in NXT.
Yeah.
But that was actually a very good group, which got me invested in Ciampa and Walter / Gunther, and one of those takeover matches that were really, really good. But you probably don't want Thatcher on AEW consistently because, like you said, he's not everybody's cup of tea. I don't think he was I don't know where their match was in the quarter hours for the show overall, but I know Thatcher's not going to be like a guy that draws and gains a lot of noise or eyeballs, but
against Danielson, that's one different than if you're taking on, I don't know,
Keith Lee.
Yeah, Keith Lee, right? That's not, or Swerve. I love Swerve though, so I'm not going to say that. So.
But yeah, shout out to Thatcher and his mean guy face. And as far as the match, Revolution, can't wait. Bryan Danielson wrestling an hour, and I think people underestimate how good a wrestler MJF is, because he generally does not miss at all when he wrestles. I harken back to the match he had with Darby. That Darby match was fantastic. That was great. His match with Yuta, really good. He's gonna go out there and probably have a 4.5 star or maybe 4 2/4, whatever, a 4 3/4 match with Takeshita on Wednesday. So that'll be great. And maybe he loses. I don't know. Maybe he's willing to do the job and build another guy, because MJF, obviously his only losses I think last year were to CM Punk and then Captain Shawn Dean. So
and Wardlow, he laid down for Wardlow.
Oh yes, yeah, he did. Yeah, thank you. But so if something were to happen and Takeshita were to win, I mean, that's a big time main event that you could build in the following weeks just for TV. And maybe they tease, oh hey, well maybe you make it a triple threat, or or however it goes. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to the match on Wednesday. And then the percentage, I think MJ retains. I think it's 100%. Danielson has made it actively known he just wants to wrestle. He doesn't want belts. Although I know people yearn for the Danielson run. If they were going to get it, I think your only chance to belt him up would have been during the summer versus Arthur Ashe. I think that would have been, if that was me, I would have had Danielson go over. That's just me, just to, I guess, have Danielson with the belt. But I think it's like 100%. And I think the match will be fantastic. I can't, like, Iron Man matches, like, historically can be kind of like meh. But I mean, Danielson's in there. He's a genius. MGF, he's a genius. Like, so they're going to make magic together. And, I know everybody. I've seen people kind of say, "Oh, well, the Brett always harken back to Brett and Sean." I mean, I think that might have nostalgia lore a little bit more. If you go back and actually watch it, it's like it's solid, but I wouldn't say it's like Okada Omega type of levels or anything like that. So, but
did my shirt subtly get you into that zone there, Brian?
Oh, no, I'm a Bret Hart guy, so Bret's always right. Every time, Bret's always right. Yeah, I think the match will be fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing is like how you pace that match, right, from a work rate standpoint, right? You don't want to go Bret, Shawn Michaels, right? That speed, that's too slow in modern wrestling. You also, I just think for your physical body's sake, I think MJF and Danielson have the cardio to go the pace of Okada and Omega, but I think somewhere in the middle there is a good happy medium, sort of like, Hangman and Danielson went like that pace. It didn't feel like as long as it doesn't feel like an hour, that's going to be a huge win. And I'm just curious, and I think we'll see this in the storytelling of, it doesn't seem to me like MJF and Danielson would book a match themselves where, it's 2 falls to 2 falls and someone gets a pin with a minute left, right? It feels like this is like there's going to be 1 fall throughout the match and it's going to happen at like the 55-minute mark, and then you have the other guy chasing, something like that. So I think some sort of unique story on the way the match is presented and not doing the contrived, it's tied and then someone gets a pinfall with 30 seconds would be the way I would book it. So I'm curious to see how that is. That for me is going to mean a lot on how they do things. No overtime, nothing like that. But I certainly think MJF wins probably underhandedly. If he gets an underhanded pin at the 55-minute mark and then Danielson is fighting back and loses gracefully, trying to win the right way, I think that's a pretty good story to tell and gets MJF over as a heel.
Yeah, I will say, just to reiterate, Danielson is a master of the dark arts on making 60-minute matches not feel that long, because I completely forgot that I should have already put this match over. I was there for the draw for Danielson and Page. Mm-hmm. That obviously went an hour, but it only felt like 25 or 30 minutes, and it was great.
Yeah. I mean, it felt that way with watching on TV with commercial breaks, right?
Yes.
It didn't feel like with an hour, so like an hour. So, I was about to wrap up. Zach's got a question, so please, if anyone else has a question, pop it in here. We'll get to it. We're kind of at that part of the show. So, does Ruby make Britt believe she's on her side and then swerve her, or just straight up turn heel? So, I guess there's more we can talk about. Briefly, I think the story is still unfolding, and I think it's a good story with the OGs versus the outsiders. But where are you on this? Where's Ruby seems to be the crux? Is I think it's almost certain that Jamie and Britt are now baby faces. Obviously, Saraya and Tony are heels. So Ruby right now in the story, Jade too, I think is a big piece of this, depending on what she's going to do, or if she's just on her own until she loses. What do you think Ruby's doing long term?
I think Ruby has kind of come back a little bit more aggressive based on her matches that she's had. I kind of feel like I like her work, but I feel like she needs a new coat of paint, and potentially aligning her with the outsiders makes the most logical sense. You're having this. That's an easy in-build story. You could have her and Willow go against each other. Obviously, they just had that bloodbath a couple weeks ago versus Ty and Anna Jay. So I feel like that's an easy way to put that in there, because I don't know about you, but I'm just kind of just my own fantasy booking canon here. I'm under the impression they're teasing this so far in advance, where eventually during the summer we're getting blood and guts with the outsiders and the homegrowns, are we not? That seems like the most logical play here.
Yeah. For when? Sorry, I was.
Well, like historically, I forget the date of when they do Blood and Guts, but it's usually around May, give or take.
Yeah, I think it was June last year. We talked about this on a show previously. I think June was like the resounding response by the chat. But yeah, I think you can move that up whenever, and that makes a lot of sense for when this would happen. So yeah, that's more like, is Ruby the crux of the story where she's the fifth person? She's the one outsider who's on team, originals, and then like what she does in that match is the crux of everything. She's on, the top of the cage. It's her, Britt, and Saraya. And like, what's Ruby going to do? Is she going to help Saraya or is she going to help Britt? Like, that's, I think, the story they're telling. And that feels like the way that, I think, for better or for worse, I think Tony Khan and I view wrestling very similarly.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say, that, but like when Ruby had that Rampage match where she bladed, too deep, obviously for safety, but it worked tremendously for me. Like, she's back. She's bleeding like crazy. She's putting this crazy main event on during Rampage, and is one of the most talked about things in wrestling that week. I think that like made me think like, oh yeah, Ruby is like, she should be a top 3 babyface or 3 heel in this division at this time. And I don't know if Tony Khan had the same thing watching that match, but it feels like right for where she's been booked on her return, and this is like her chance to become the star that I think most people wanted her to be in WWE and in AEW. And I think that's where they're going here. And then like what she does, I don't know. She feels still like a babyface to me in the long run. And her to like side with Saraya and then be a henchman with Tony Storm with Saraya just doesn't make sense for her character. But AEW wrestling in general has messed up lots of characters in the past too. So that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, like I really enjoyed the blood and I guess the no disqualification match. I do like how Tony's kind of made this kind of like a yearly thing now, especially with the women. I think that's really cool. I think overall, like I think Tony needs to really be commended for how he's really starting to kind of readjust how he's booking the division overall. I think, everybody's kind of yearned for more storylines within just like the division, bigger platforms for these ladies to like have the opportunity to do the same stuff like John Moxley can do. And obviously like Ruby bleeding crazy like John Moxley was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Them doing the outsiders versus the homegrowns, very simple, like wrestling storyline. It's like what WWE should have done with WCW when they bought each other. So they're Tony Khan being a WCW, shill. He's gonna like say, "Oh, I can actually do this, right? Get like, let me at it." So, love Jamie Hayter. Her and Tony Storm, I feel like have put on fantastic matches on Champions. The Rampage match with Sakura and Hayter was tremendous. I don't think I've ever seen women's chests that red after a match. So fantastic stuff with Hayter. I'm glad they're just giving her the chance like to be on TV more consistently. Super happy for her. I'm glad they've at least tried to course correct a little bit, because the Saraya, I guess debut and then kind of like match, the entire kind of, I think you and Zach have always kind of been on the nose how it's been kind of like up and down. It hasn't been great. But obviously Saraya is trying to get back in the groove of things. So I applaud them for trying to actually make the adjustment on, okay, hey, this isn't necessarily working. We need to like pivot and like readjust. And Saraya can always go back to being a babyface in the long run. And I think Tony Storm, I think she could be a heel just fine. And you could always turn her back babyface and rock the house whenever you want to. And I'm hoping, this was actually my, not to pull back the curtain, Tyler. So on the Wrestling Observer prediction show, I actually put out the prediction where I declared that Jamie Hayter would defend the AEW Women's title versus Britt Baker at Revolution. It would be the main event. So I'm hoping all this story of blood and guts can eventually lead there. So that way I can show everybody I was right and you were wrong.
Partial credit at least, right?
Yes.
It would be maybe for Double or Nothing, right? That feels like a Double or Nothing main event.
I think they could try. I think they could stretch that out to Revolution. I think if they do this right.
Well, yeah, Revolution's in 3 weeks, right?
Or not Revolution. God, I'm
Double or Nothing is the one after that.
All out. I'm sorry,
okay.
All out. That's what I meant.
Yeah. I think no matter what, it can main event a pay-per-view, and if anyone's going to do it, it's probably going to be Britt, right? It's going to be the first woman to main event a AEW pay-per-view. I think was track with the history. She'll be the first woman inducted in the AEW Hall of Fame, probably whenever that happens. So
yes,
to get all those platitudes now, I think is worthwhile. So, well, that I think is going to wrap us today, Brian. Appreciate you joining and covering for Zach, really for me, since you're kind of more in my role for the show. So I appreciate you being the analyst on the show as I try not to drive the car off the road here. But so yeah, let the people know where to find you on social media and where can they read your article. I checked the Torch while you were talking about it. I did not see it on the homepage. So is there like just search your name? What's the best way for them to find your article?
Let's see. I will
or you can tweet it out or something.
Yeah. I'll resend it out. But if at Brian Zillum on Twitter, I think it just went out yesterday. So obviously there's been several stories that populated on the main website prior to then. So it might be on there. You might just have to click the more button. So it's not necessarily at the top of the page anymore. But yeah, at Brian Zillum, it's a quick, easy read. I think it's probably 900 words. So I promise you I won't take more than 5 minutes of your time because I know everybody likes to speed read through stuff. But yeah, at Brian Zillum at Twitter. Just want to thank Zach and obviously Wade and just the Torch in general for providing me the opportunity. And I hope I represented the Torch overall pretty well at the Rumble.
Well, I would say you did. So
nice.
You at least take it from me. So I'd rather you there than me is what I would say. So whatever that means, probably be, again, not S back, but that's how it is sometimes. That's why, we all got to know our role as one famous people's champion once said. So, so that being said, I think we'll end the show there. And thank you again for your in-person analysis of the Rumble, Brian. And hopefully Zach will be back next week with me. Or maybe you'll be with Zach next week, Brian. You never know what's going to happen. So thank you for joining as always. And thank you everyone for watching. Please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification as always. We also are live now on Twitch and Twitter. So if you cannot watch on YouTube as easily as those other places, you can check us out there. Same thing at PWTorch on all 3 accounts. So thank you, everybody. And we will